Hello there. My name is Claus, and I'm doing 100 innovation keynotes in 100 days. Today is keynote number 41, but today is also Valentine's Day, so therefore it's a little bit special. Now, I want to show you two females that are incredibly important to me. One of them in purple is Sue, and the other one in blue is Saga. Purple Sue, blue Saga. Here's a short video. Very short. Now, I filmed that not too long ago during our Christmas 2020. And before I say anything further, this is a picture of me and Sue in Iceland a couple of years back. I love this woman. This is, well, we'll get to who she is. But for now, let me know that I love her. Very, very simply. And a very fitting thing to say on Valentine's Day. Don't worry, I've told her as well. I'm not just telling you guys, I've told her as well. Now, what does this have to do with anything? And just for the record, and I put in this slide so I didn't forget, I love Saga as well, who's my daughter, of course, who's our daughter. But this is not about her. This is about Sue. Now, today is Valentine's Day. Today is a good day for talking about your loved ones, for telling your loved ones that you love them, whether they are romantic partners or something completely different. It could be family, it could be yourself. There are many ways of doing Valentine's Day these days, which is great. But here I want to talk about one special person, that is Sue. Why? We'll get to that. And what does it have to do with innovation? Don't worry, there'll be something there as well. This is Sue. Again, this is in Iceland at the Foxy waterfalls, the picture I took a couple of years back during our trip there. And I could describe Sue in her relation to me. She's my co-parent. We have a daughter together, the nearly 3-year-old tornado Saga, who you saw on the previous kind of small video. She's also my girlfriend, so we have a romantic relationship. And she's my roommate, so we live together. These three things are three ways of describing Sue that all make sense. They're all true. I could use them in a meaningful way. Now, I could also describe her, saying that she's a dreamer, and she's somebody who doesn't mind kind of thinking big thoughts, which is nice. And she's adaptable. She's pretty good at change. Not always super happy about it, but actually surprisingly good at adapting to it, saying, okay, we're going this way now. It's one thing I really love about her. And third, she's supportive. As a way of showing how supportive, she's okay with me recording this video to you on Valentine's Day. Right now, she's putting our daughter to bed, and I am recording this video. Supportive? Yes, I think that counts. Now, I could also describe her with her skill set. She's an illustrator, a professional illustrator, and does work for clients on kind of making visual ideas come to life. She's a writer. She's working on her first big novel, a crime novel. And I'm not going to get into that because then I just get excited and talk to you about it. Let it be said, she's a writer. She's a good writer. And last but not least, she's actually, though she doesn't do work professionally with quality assurance, she's pretty good at saying, why is that there? Why didn't they do that? Why didn't they think of that? How about that? Does that fit together? And it means I could take her into a room and just ask her, see, what do you notice? And she'll say, but that, why is that there? Or this doesn't make sense. Or what are they doing with that? And unlike a lot of people, she will actually answer if somebody asks her, not just be over polite and say, oh, everything's fine. She'll say, well, since you asked me, that is out of place. What do you mean by that? What is that? She's pretty damn good at that. And that helps me because I can go to her with something that I'm doing. And even if she doesn't know the specifics, she'll be able to say, this doesn't make sense. Or could you do that differently? Or why is that in that position? That's why I call her a QA expert, even though she doesn't do it for a living. Now, these are 9 words to describe Sue. They are also 9 innovation paths. Ooh, and there's the innovation link. You waited for it. You got it. Now, what does that mean? It means as a co-parent, she and I could discuss what are we doing with our daughter. Just practical things like what are we feeding her, who picks her up if she's somewhere else. For example, if we took her to daycare, who's going to take care of that? Who brushes her teeth? Who takes care of her diapers? What do we allow her to do? What kind of values do we try to give her? What sort of things are yes? What sort of things are no? No, there's a ton of things in the whole sphere of co-parenting where we are constantly innovating, constantly changing, constantly doing new things. And these things not only have an effect on our relationship with our daughter and with each other, but also on my job, which is ironically where I'm coming from right now. I'm putting on the professional Claus hat, the innovation strategist and keynote speaker hat, because the way we parent has a huge impact on my work. I work from home. I am not fully employed. I'm self-employed. I'm part of several different companies. I freelance for other people. I have clients all over the globe. So it means that what my relationship with my daughter is hugely kind of something that hugely affects my work life. Is she allowed in meetings? She sometimes drops in on them, whether she's allowed or not. How much time do I spend with her? When is there like work block time? All these sorts of things. So when I'm looking at my career, there's a lot of innovation that comes from that space, that co-parenting space. Even if you might think it has nothing to do with my career, it actually has everything to do with it, because it's so important to what happens in my daily life and what do I want to do? How do I spend my time? What do I want to teach her? What does she teach me? All these sorts of things. So the fact that Sue is my co-parent, one of these 9 words used to describe her, is super important for my work professionally. Now the second is she's also my girlfriend. That also is a major factor. There are people out there who have significant others who can support them financially. There are people out there who have significant others who need to be supported financially. There are some who like to be left alone. There are some who like to spend a lot of time together. There are some who support. There are some who need support. There's some to kind of, all these things get mixed up and crisscrossed in complex webs of relationships, because that's what it is to be in a romantic relationship with somebody. It's usually pretty complex. And that means that Sue and I are not only parents together, we're also a couple. And we're constantly negotiating that. We're constantly innovating on that. We're constantly trying out new stuff. And again, that affects my work. How are my work blocks structured? What can I count on her to do? What can I not count on her to do? Does she bring me lunch sometimes when I'm having a busy day and forget to eat? Yes, she does. Very kind of her. That's a thing that means that I don't have to worry about my own lunch, and I can schedule meetings like bam, 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 bam. Very practical, very low-key, just an example of how, in this case, kind of a romantic partnership also has a huge influence on work. And if I want to change things career-wise, then there are many of them that I can do in my girlfriend's kind of territory, if we should look at it that way. I don't really know what the right word is for it, but you know what I'm saying. Now, thirdly, she's my roommate. So there's a lot there as well. I mean, I'm lucky enough that in the house we now live in, we moved here in September last year to this island in the Baltic called Bornholm. And one of the really nice things about leaving the capital city of Copenhagen and its 1.6 million people behind to go to a small island, and we now live in a town of 3,700. We live near the sea now, but we have a garden. We also have space enough that I get to have my own office. Now, that's a roommate decision. We didn't have to be a couple to have that sort of discussion about how we use our common living space. We didn't have to have a kid to have that. But since we are roommates, there's also a thing. Could I take over our secondary living room, which is now Sue's office, and bigger than mine, by the way. She has the really nice office. But could I take over that and kind of get room for a better home studio? Well, that's a roommate decision. And it means that there are things that, again, if we come back to my work life, that depend on this roommate situation, on this roommate kind of role that Sue has. And that means that sometimes we could say, okay, let's look at how I could land bigger clients, or how could I make more money, or how could I do more meaningful work, whatever it is. Well, some of that could come from her. Some, not directly, of course, she's not going to pull money out of thin air or clients, but saying, hey, Claus, I think we should take the basement that we have a kind of a small cellar room, and we should turn that into a podcasting studio. We should totally soundproof it. We'll do it ourselves, and then you will have a podcasting studio. It's like, oh, that sounds cool. So like a really like almost soundproof, state-of-the-art podcasting studio? Yeah, we should do that. That's a roommate decision. So there's a possibility here, for me at least in my career, that some of the kind of changes or experiments happen not just because I think of something, but because we think of something in this roommate constellation. So these are, for me, 3 important and interesting ways to not only describe her, but also to look at what kind of paths to innovation are there. So those are kind of the practical, the functionality ones. So let's move on to the fact that she's a dreamer. Well, sorry, that leads to us sharing things. We share dreams. We talk about where do we want to go? What do we want to achieve? What do we not care about? What do we want to do? What do we want to experience? And of course, that is also part of my work life, because if I'm trying to land a job in Shanghai, just as an example, let's say I want to work for Disney in Shanghai, that's not a far out thought, then maybe it would be smart if my better half is on board with the dream of living in China. If not, it's going to be pretty tricky. If she's like, I don't like China, I don't want to go, I never want to have anything to do with Disney, I don't share that dream of working abroad, I don't share the dream of maybe working for a company like Disney, well, then it's suddenly a more tricky situation. Luckily for me, she's not only a traveler and somebody who kind of likes new experiences, but also somebody who has a thing like, yeah, maybe we should live abroad at some point. So when I say, hey, there is a possible job opportunity in Shanghai, do you think I should look into it? Instead of saying, no, never, she said, okay, give it a shot. It ended up not being a thing. Who knows what happens in 5 years? But the fact that she is a dreamer means that there are some paths for me to innovate that are tied to that dreaming. And if we take it a little bit further here, the fact that she's adaptable is a huge thing. As a self-employed person, my job hours are not exactly 9 to 5, and my work doesn't flow neatly into my in tray and then I take care of it and then it kind of drizzles away. No, things come in like, it's more of a roller coaster. Sometimes it's incredibly busy, sometimes like, okay, what to do today? Let me think of something. Sometimes things are hard, sometimes things are easy, sometimes they're fun, sometimes they're tough, but there's a lot of variety, and adaptability on my part is necessary. Sure, if I wasn't adaptable, I would have been crushed as an entrepreneur many, many years ago, let alone with the bad situation I'm in now. But the fact that she's adaptable, that's also necessary for me to be able to do some of the things I do career-wise. Because if she wasn't, if she said, this is how it is, I need, sorry, not corona or anything, just a cough from talking too much. I need stability. I need to know exactly when you're done working. I need to know exactly what money's coming in. I need to know exactly how we spend our time, because if not, I can't wrap my brain around. That's fair. Some people are like that. But luckily, she's not one of them. And that means that gives me a lot of freedom career-wise. Not everyone has that freedom. So that adaptability is not just a way of describing her, but it also opens up paths for change, paths for innovation, because I can say, hey, let's try this thing. And she'll say, okay, I'm not sure it's a good idea, but you try it out. Third is, in this row, she's supportive. Her basic instinct is to say, okay, you go for it. She may not always believe in my crazy ideas, which is fair. She may not always think that what I'm coming up with is smart or kind of is going to work. But she's generally supportive. She says, you believe in it, you go for it. I'll do my best I'll hold the fort. I'll do my best to make it work. For example, with these keynotes, I'm doing one of them a day, that does suck some energy out of me. And that means that she's the primary saga responsible when these are happening, because we found out that when saga interrupts halfway, it's it's not good, and I do them in one take, so having to kind of try to edit that in doesn't really work that well, and that puts pressure on her, and that means she needs to be supportive, and if she wasn't supportive, I wouldn't be able to do this. So again, looking at my private sphere and the fact that I have a supportive girlfriend means it opens up new paths for me to try out work life. Now, finally, the third column, she's an illustrator. And it means that when I go to clients, I can say, do you want an illustrator with me? Do you want me to kind of bring in an illustrator to support the project? And some clients say, yeah, we'd love that. Do you know one? And I say, well, I happen to live with one. It's like, oh, that's cool. And when they learn that she also charges a reasonable amount, and they see some of her work, they're like, great, bring her in. And I've seen that happen, let's just say more than once, right? And not get into detail. But yes, it happens. And for me, not just as an innovator or as a speaker, but also as a consultant and somebody who's engaged in projects, it's a huge strength to be able to bring in an illustrator that, one, I trust, two, I've worked with before, three, I know I can work with. There's an incredibly fast turnaround. We can bounce ideas, all that sort of thing. Communication channels are like dang, 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 because we live together. I mean, she has a desk right next to mine when she wants to use it in my office. So that's a huge advantage for me from the job front, because I have an illustrator girlfriend. and one that takes on jobs and actually likes working with me. So that's another way. That opens up new paths. It means there are things I could do now that I couldn't do if I didn't have an illustrator at hand. There are chances I can take. There are things we can do together that I couldn't do solo. So that's a huge strength. She's a writer, and it also means that we write children's books together. We published our first, or co-published our first children's book here in December, a children's story about Christmas, and there are more on the way. And she writes her own stuff as well. So it means that professionally, I now have access to not just myself as a writer, because I've done a lot of writing over the years, 31 books, amongst other things. So writing is kind of, it's in my wheelhouse, but having the support of an extra writer when, let's say, we're doing grant applications or we're doing some sort of big texting, hugely important. It also means I have an in-house editor to help me with stuff. Super, super good. And again, opens up, you've got it by now, new paths for innovating. And finally, the ninth thing on this matrix is the fact that she's a QA expert. And what does that mean? Well, it does mean that she's good at spotting when things are wrong and actually saying, hey, why is this? This is stupid. And a lot of people are good at that, but they're not all good at saying it. They usually come with this, hey, this feels dumb to me, or I don't get it. Oh, but somebody probably gets it, so I'm not going to question it. She's really good at questioning stuff. She's good at saying, what's with this? It doesn't make sense. Why is that? And then sometimes I see people, I don't know. Good. Can you change it? Well, yeah, I could change it. And that happens in my life as well. She'll look at a thing I'm doing. She'll say, why don't you do it differently? I say, oh, yeah, you're right. Why don't? Okay, then I will. And of course, sometimes having somebody, especially your significant other, be too good at quality control, at quality assurance, is a bit annoying. But most of the time, especially if you kind of learn how to use it and how to ask for it in a good way, it's a super good skill, because it means that I can go to her and ask for her opinion, and I know that usually she'll say something that makes my work better. Again, opening up new paths. Now, what does all this have to do with alibi? It was in the title. What does this have to do with alibi? I wanted to say nice things about my girlfriend because it's Valentine's Day. In general, I want to say nice things about my girlfriend, but especially because it's Valentine's Day. And Valentine's Day gives me an alibi to do that on this innovation keynote. Question was, could I do it elegantly? I don't know if I could do it elegantly, but I could at least give myself 4 reasons. Number 1, it's Valentine's Day. The fact that I talk about my girlfriend on Valentine's Day, even on my professional podcast, is fair enough. I have alibi to do that. If I talked about her on any other random day, I could, but it would be more tricky. But now I can say Valentine's Day special, talk about girlfriend, bam. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is I could use her as an example for this whole description, sort of 9 ways of describing 3 different kind of ways of looking at a person or describing what they are, who they are, what they do, kind of how they are as a person. And she's good for that. I could have used her as an example, and then I'd got to say things about her indirectly, even if it wasn't about her as such. There's, of course, the fact about the innovation paths, which I think are actually very, very relevant, that linking innovation in our private lives to innovations in our career are something that's an overlooked discipline for many, many of us, especially as more and more people are moving into the gig economy, the freelance economy, the kind of the non-tethered to a company mix of work-life balance, work-health balance, that sort of thing. Then it becomes incredibly relevant to see where can you innovate on your home front where it will have a career effect, especially now in Corona times when a lot of us are literally at the home front. So I could use her as an example there. That was a 3rd good reason for getting to talk about her. And finally, number 4, talking about Sue gave me an alibi to talk about alibi. I liked it. I don't know if you liked it, but I liked that, because having an alibi to talk about alibi is pretty nice, because alibis are incredibly important. Having an excuse to talk about something, having a reason for it, having an alibi, so to speak, means that it's suddenly permissible, it's suddenly acceptable, instead of just like, why are you talking about that? That's just bullshit, Claus. What's wrong with you? What sort of human are you? We're not like, oh, it makes sense, and kind of sweet, weird, but kind of sweet, maybe, at least acceptable. So alibi is something that is nice to understand. And in this case, it gave me an alibi to talk about alibi. Now, finally, if 4 good reasons for telling the world that you love your girlfriend and you think she's pretty amazing on Valentine's Day aren't enough, well, then I don't know what is. I'll leave you with that and say Happy Valentine's Day, and thank you.